when you are a seller and you are looking for trading with your partner in India or abroad, there are certain things that you must keep in mind. The first thing is that however good your product may be, whatever the quality you have, may be the best in the world, excellent packaging, excellent brand image, excellent service, excellent delivery, absolutely timely, maybe before time. But at the end of the day, if you don't get paid, all your efforts, all your marketing efforts, brand building efforts, everything goes to waste. So ultimately, the bottom line is you got to get paid for all the efforts that you put in. Now, how do you make sure of that? Okay, before that, let's go back to the basics. And for those who understand the basics, please bear with me for a little while till we catch up with you. Now, suppose you want to buy electric iron. Where did you go? To the neighboring electric shop, or maybe to a bigger mall. We have got a lot of malls all over the country today. You may want to go to a mall. Now, because why do you go to the mall? Because you have a wider choice of models, a wider choice of prices. You can inspect the item yourself and find out which one exactly you want to buy. So, you go to a mall, you check the prices, you check the models, and ultimately you make your selection. What is the next stage? Everybody has gone to a mall, so all of us know. What do? We take the item, ask the seller, the mall owner or the mall counter fellow to pack it up, bring it to the counter where the payment is made. You pay in cash, you pay by a debit card, you pay by credit card, put it in your car and take it home. Or if it is light, you don't even need a car, just carry it home and use it. Now, think of something bigger. Think of something which is slightly heavier. It's not so easy to carry it home. Suppose a refrigerator, a washing machine, a dishwasher. It costs you more. It is heavy. Maybe you can't pay with 1 month's salary all your savings. What do you got to do? You may have to ask for installment. You may have to ask them to transport it to your home. So, ultimately what happens? Just think of it. You have completed several stages in the process of making a purchase, and the mall has effected a sale. So, there are two parties to the situation. Either it is a buyer or a seller. When the two come together, the transaction is completed. Now, let us think of what we have done here in the process. We have looked at a sale transaction and a purchase transaction. Now, the sale transaction, as it has happened, it has happened from the seller's side and you are the buyer. But what has happened in between? One party has made a selection. So, there is a choice of the product, choice of the quality that involves the product, the selection of the price, your choice, then details about backup service, after sale service, transportation from the point of purchase to the point of its use, installation. Transportation is one of the issues. How do you transport? Small item, you carry it in your hand. Bigger item, you have to use a medium of transport. Maybe your car, maybe a rickshaw, even maybe a truck sometimes, depending on the product that you buy. So, that's question of transportation. Then comes the question of payment. Would the mall owner or the shop owner give you credit? Would they give you installments? Exactly what are you looking for and what the mall owner or the shop owner or the seller is looking for. At some point, you have to come together. Now, think of something where it is not that easy, not over the counter. The buyer, suppose he is in Mumbai, you are in Calcutta. Now, he says, okay, You are the manufacturer of some lovely pieces of electric iron. We want to buy 1,000 pieces. You have a problem there, maybe. If you don't know him, or a new contact, a new customer, you have to first find out who the buyer is, how many pieces he wants, and how he is going to pay you for it. The transportation is easy, it's big because it is over land. From Calcutta to Mumbai, it is normally over land. It can go by air too, or by rail. So you have the option of transportation. And it is domestic, so there is not a problem of risk, not much at all. But at the end of the day, you have to still think of how the payment is going to be made. You want to be absolutely sure that the payment should come without fail. Okay, you have to ask for advance payment. How much? 100%? 10%? 5%? If it is 5%, then other 95 is a risk he may or may not pay. If it is 100% that you are looking for, then the buyer, he would say, well, why should I give you 100%? You may not deliver the product. You may deliver damaged product. You may have delivered a product which I did not ask for, a different model, different shape, different color. So ultimately, there is no agreement between the buyer and the seller for the transaction to be taking place smoothly, efficiently, without any hitch. Now think of something bigger scenario where you are talking about exports and imports. It crosses the country's borders. It crosses areas which are dangerous. Think of the Horn of Africa. Think of Somalia. Think of Afghanistan. And you can add Ukraine today. Now, it is risky for any product to move from point A to point X absolutely safely. Anything can go wrong, even if the parties don't want to. You want to transport it by ship, question of piracy is always there. The ship can sink, the ship can divert because of storm, it can get just held up in the mid-ocean because of the problem with the machinery, its engines, anything can happen. And as the management gurus say, if anything can go wrong, it will go wrong. So how do you manage them? So cross-border is a high-risk trade, more so because you don't know the other party well. How familiar you want to be with the other party? He is doing business in any part of the globe. He may be in USA, in South America, in London, in Europe, in any part of Africa, any part of Japan. The point is, you neither know the party very well, even if you do, you are not thorough with the day-to-day development in the economic scenario. So today, what the country is good, tomorrow the country may face a situation where it can't pay, or it may force the party, your buyer, to close down his business or change his business model. So the question is, in a new area, in a new country, with its own laws, systems and procedures, customs rules, the legal issues, we don't even know our own legal system here thoroughly, not all of it, not even part of it. Not to talk about laws abroad, laws in the countries where you trade in, and not only one country, you trade with many countries. Can you know the laws of every country? Practically impossible. So that's the risk. If he wants to take you for a ride, he can. So how do you manage these risks? How do you make sure that you make payment, the party makes payment to you, you make the sale, but at the end of the day, you are confident that your product would reach the buyer and the buyer would be paying whenever the payment becomes due. How does the transaction take place? Back to the same question. How do you manage these risks, with particularly international trade? So, these risks frankly depend on number of issues which almost all of us know. One is simply the risk perception. If I come and ask for you for 100 rupees, you may think once. If I ask for 10 rupees, you may say, take, I can take the risk of 10 rupees, give it away. But if you're asking for 1 lakh, then you're going to ask a million questions, even then you may not be willing to part with the money. It's a question of risk perception, and it depends on what? Many things, among them mainly the relationship. Do you know your buyer well enough, closely enough, long enough to trust him as your business partner, as a counterpart? What has been his track record, say over the last 5 years, 3 years, 7 years? Has he been paying every time routinely, smoothly, efficiently, on time? Or is it that sometimes there has been problems, but the problems are real problems, not within his control? So, it is okay with you. You are confident that he is a good customer, a good buyer. So, his market reputation and standing also may help you decide right now that yes, even if it's a new contact, I don't have to worry. Suppose IBM is buying something from you, importing something. Would you inquire? Suppose Microsoft wants to be your buyer. Would you hesitate at Microsoft because it is a new customer, you don't know much about him? You may, but you don't know person to person, business track record wise. What do you do? So, that depends on the market risks, your perceptions, the market reputation, what is the standing of the customer, what the other buyers feel about him. Then question of market dynamics and competition. If you want to enter a market, enter a customer's domain with your product, you may have to make some compromises. Compromise in terms of price, in terms of the period you give him credit for, you look at what the other people are doing. If you have got a policy of your own in your company, in your firm, or as an export manager, that we won't give you any credit. But then you find in a particular trade, credit of 30 days or 60 days is the norm, standard. Then you have to change your policy, make sure that you can also match them, if not beat them, in the particular market. But then you think, it's too much of a risk. I can't bear the risk. If something goes wrong, my company will sink. Well, then don't do it. Anything that causes a danger to your company, danger to your firm, danger to your operation, is not something that anybody will recommend that yes, you still go ahead and do it. Don't get into that till you are strong enough, till you have enough money, till you have got enough capital to bear such shocks. Don't get into that area. Then a question of cost and convenience and urgency. Now, suppose you have got a assembly line, you have got a number of machines, raw material coming from one side and getting out from the other side, smooth operation going on. Lot of orders in your hand, you are very busy making sure that the deadlines are met. Something goes wrong somewhere, a small part of an important vital part of the machine in that assembly line, in the supply chain has gone out of order. Now, you want that machine part urgently, it's a small one, but very, very pricey. What do you do? Would you look for buyers? Would you float a tender? Would you go into internet and search? Or if you know the supplier, the manufacturer, what do? You send him a wire or pick up the phone and talk to him immediately and tell him, sir, I want this machine part immediately from your factory. Please send it by air. I am sending you the money by telegram. Instant. No question of negotiations, arguments, market research, dilly-dallying, debating whether to give an advance or not. You want to send the money immediately and make sure that he is willing to and he actually does airlift the product to you, to your factory. So, as you can observe, that depending on the market dynamics, depending on relationship, track record, and again another part of the risk that I must touch on, that is the changing scenario in the world. Now, once upon a time, people used to think Africa was a backward country, dark ages, dark continent, everything dark, possibility of being paid also dark. But then now things have changed. From 2008 onwards, when the financial tsunami started by the US, covered the rest of the world, number of countries, believe me, countries, not customers, countries went bankrupt. One, if I am correct, was Iceland. A number of countries had serious problems in making payment on the behalf of their importers to the foreign sellers or the foreign exporters. Because they did not have enough money, their banking system collapsed. I can name some of the countries that you may know about already. One was Greece, it was rescued some or the other. Question of Ireland, Portugal, even Spain. Every country in Europe had some problem or the other regarding keeping their country above the water level. Now, yesterday, any exporter would have said, buyer in Europe, number one. Absolutely number one, no worry at all. Today, if you want to export to Europe, you want to make sure that even if the buyer is good, you know the buyer for a long time, but the country is not in your control, not the buyer's control. You want him to pay and you say, okay, you are good, I trust you, I have faith in you, but I want to make sure that nothing stops you from effecting payment and nothing comes in the way of my getting paid. So, let us come to some arrangement so that both of us are satisfied, both of us can manage the risks which are not in our control and continue to do business smoothly. Because at the end of the day, both the parties, the seller and the buyer, both of them want to do business. So, what are the options? What are the options for payment between the buyer and the seller? The buyer needs to know how you want to get paid as a seller, and the seller would need to know what arrangement would be suitable for the buyer to pay the seller. As I said, it will be ideal for the seller if the buyer pays 100% of the amount, but that is ideal. It does not happen. 40%, 50%, 10%, even 0%, for the buyer may feel strongly about his ego and he may say, no, why do you need even advance? Don't you trust me? So, these sort of things will go on and there has to be a meeting point. Now, let us take from one extreme to the other the payment options that we have. The best for the seller is advance payment. Next comes open account. And open account means what? Open account means the seller sending goods overseas to the buyer, giving it up to complete to his custody and getting paid either every month or as and when the goods and products are sold off. You think it is risky? Yes, it is risky. But how do we manage the risk? How does the seller manage the risk? He simply says that we need some other arrangement. That one is usually that happens in diamond trade, that is, they have the relationship of blood or very friends, cousins, relatives who receive the goods, store it in their warehouse, make sale as and when possible, as and when required, and send an account statement at the end of the month, at the end of every month, and the buyer keeps a small margin for himself. He debits the expenses from the amount totally received against proceeds, and finally, the rest of the amount is sent to the seller. So, that account is settled. Risks, yes, risks are high, because suppose suddenly the buyer, who is a stockholder in a foreign country, dies, disappears, something goes wrong somewhere. As far as regulations are concerned, the laws of the country is concerned, things can go wrong, obviously, absolutely can go wrong. And while it is transit period, if you are making shipment to the to your relative abroad and something sinks, the ship sinks, the goods get damaged, who will be responsible? Obviously the seller, because the buyer, unless he gets the goods, he can't do anything with the goods. So, he has to ultimately just simply throw his hands up and say, sorry, it is your product, I didn't receive it, how can you expect payment from me? The seller may say, I did my job, I shipped it according to the arrangement. So, I did my job, what can happen? I don't know what to do. Insurance, that's the only option maybe, but again you may not get the 100% of the amount that you have shipped. Next option, collection bills or bills for collection. Again there are two variations in that. One is collection bills payable at site, payable, or it is said also said collection bills payable on demand. Collection bills, again another variety is called usance bills. Usance bills for collection. Usance bills for collection means that the payment need not be made by the buyer immediately when the goods are received, immediately when the documents arrive, but only after a period of time. Now, that is called a DA bill, that is documents against acceptance, that is documents delivered against acceptance, or is called usance bills payable after sight, after a period of time. Now, there are other options available. One is of course banker's acceptance and banker's co-acceptance. Then again deferred payment. As far as I understand about deferred payment, it is like this. The difference between usance bill and deferred payment. Usance bills, suppose is a bill for $10,000. When the due date comes, $10,000 is paid to you, maybe after 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. But when it is deferred payment, it normally happens for a much larger sum, say $15 million amount. Then you can't pay at one shot. Then the buyer has to take time to pay. Suppose a power plant is being set up. It costs millions of dollars, if not billions, to set up. The power plant has to generate power. It has to sell the power. It has to pay for a lot of other things also, not only to you, who has probably furnished or supplied one machine or 2 machines. So, they have got a lot of people to pay to, including you. So, what do? From the revenue earned, the buyer would be paying part to you of the $15 million that you have given him loan for, credit for, supplied for. And it is paid, suppose, every year or every half year over the period of next 10 years or 15 years. So, the payment is actually deferred over a period of time. That is called deferred payment. Then we come to one of the important instruments of payment, which is widely accepted, widely used, called letter of credit. It is called letter of credit or called LC for short. But again, there is a longer version. It is called documentary letter of credit. But nobody says that normally. They simply say LCs. Next payment option that you have, that you can negotiate for with your buyer, is called standby credit or standby letter of credit. That is SBLC. Now, what sort of thing is this? It's not very commonly used in India, not very commonly used at most of the countries in the world, but America, Europe use it extensively for one reason. See, for all other types of letters of credit or for collection bills, you need to have a bill of exchange. And what is bill of exchange? I will explain a little later. But bill of exchange attracts stamp duties of varying amounts and varying periods. Now, that is in some countries it is prohibitive. So, what these people, intelligent people did, they derived an instrument which would act like a guarantee, but look like a letter of credit. It means a standby. And what does standby mean? That it is like a bank guarantee kept aside at one side while the transaction between the seller and the buyer goes on. Only when